Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the only place where we question everything, where we don't swallow the pre-packaged nonsense that politicians love to spoon-feed us. If you were looking for an easy ride through the mainstream drivel, you've come to the wrong place. Today, we feast upon the utter political train wreck that was Keir Starmer's speech, or, as some are now calling it, the Southport surrender. Picture the scene, a confident leader, standing tall, about to deliver a rousing address to his loyal supporters. He opens his mouth, expecting applause, admiration, maybe even a few nods of approval. What does he get instead? Boos. Loud, unapologetic, and relentless. It wasn't just a handful of grumpy hecklers lurking at the back, it was a tidal wave of rejection, washing over him in real time. And why? Oh, take your pick. His vague, uninspiring economic pledges? His utterly tone-deaf stance on a Gaza ceasefire? His flip-flopping on Brexit? Or perhaps, just perhaps, it was something far more damning, the creeping realization that Starmer, for all his polished rhetoric, is about as connected to the working class as a hedge fund manager sipping champagne in a Chelsea townhouse. This, my dear viewers, wasn't just a bad night. This was a defining moment, the kind that lingers in the public consciousness like a bad smell. And believe me, it gets worse. At first, it was just a few uneasy glances. A couple of murmurs, a shifting of weight in the seats. You know the type, the kind of silence that isn't respect but hesitation. Then, from the back, a lone voice rang out. Boo! And that, my friends, was the beginning of the end. The floodgates opened. Discontent turned into outrage. What was once an audience became an opposition. People were walking out. Others were shouting back. And Starmer, bless him, carried on talking as if he hadn't just lost the room entirely. But if he thought he could salvage the situation, he was sorely mistaken. Then came the economy, or rather, the same tired clichés about growth, stability, and fiscal responsibility. Someone in the crowd shouted, "How?" Another voice chimed in. And that, folks, is the point where the whole thing went from bad to catastrophic. Because you see, the British public has heard all this before. Lower taxes, better wages, stronger economy. Yet here we are, still struggling, still watching bills rise, still waiting for that miracle Starmer promised. Then, the final nail in the coffin. Brexit. Now, if there's one thing guaranteed to ignite fury in a crowd, it's that word. Starmer had spent years championing a second referendum, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Remain camp, painting himself as the last bastion of European idealism. And now, he's telling people to move on. To Brexit voters, it was an insult, an outright dismissal of their decision. To Remainers, it was a betrayal, a sellout move designed to please no one and frustrate everyone. And suddenly, both sides agreed on one thing: Starmer wasn't to be trusted. But just when you thought the man had hit rock bottom, he pulled off the impossible. He dug even deeper. In a move that left jaws on the floor, Starmer, the so-called opposition leader, praised none other than Donald Trump. Yes, you heard that right. A man who had spent years denouncing everything Trump stood for was now applauding his Middle East policy. The audience's reaction? A mixture of stunned silence, laughter, and furious booing. Was this the same Starmer they had once believed in? The shift was too sudden, too jarring. It reeked of desperation, of someone trying to please everyone and ending up pleasing no one. By the end of the night, Starmer had achieved something truly remarkable. He had united the left, the right, the Remainers, and the Leavers against him. The fallout was immediate. Polls tanked. Social media erupted. Labour voters, the die-hard loyalists who had stuck with the party through thick and thin, were now questioning their faith. Even members of his own party were distancing themselves, their silence speaking volumes. Starmer had walked into Southport expecting a triumphant show of strength. Instead, he left looking like a man who had just realized he might not survive the next election. And the worst part? This wasn't just a speech gone wrong. This was a warning sign. A flashing red light that Labour's so-called safe bet might just be a sinking ship. So what's next? Can Starmer claw his way back from the brink, or are we witnessing the slow-motion collapse of another political career? One thing's for sure, in British politics, you're only ever one speech away from disaster. And this, my friends, was a spectacular one. We'll be watching. Always from the other side.